The Grenlec Debates, powering bright ideas.
You're watching the 11th season of the Grenlec Debates. Please bear in mind that matches, topics, and positions are randomly selected by schools. The theme for the round of 16 is Grenadian and Caribbean history. I am your chairperson, Rohan Bernard, and I call this house to order. And the motion is, be it resolved that the Caribbean Court of Justice be the final court of appeal for Grenada. The proposition, Happy Hill Secondary. The opposition, St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's. Please welcome the first speaker for the proposition.
I greet the chairman, judges, timekeepers, opponents, colleagues, audience all, good morning. I'm here to present on the moot, be it resolved that the Caribbean Court of Justice be the final court of appeal for Grenada. I stand before you to declare that the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, should be the final court of appeal for Grenada. As first speaker, I would define terms for the moot, then give the major disadvantages of the Privy Council, PC, as our appellate court. The second speaker would then highlight the benefits of using the CCJ until this gathering is unwaveringly convinced. According to the International Justice Resource Center, the CCJ settles disputes between CARICOM states and serves as the highest court of appeal for civil and criminal matters for Barbados, Belize, and Guyana. The online Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a court of appeal as a court hearing appeals for the decisions of lower courts. Mr. Chairman, currently we use the Privy Council located in the United Kingdom as our final court of appeal. One disadvantage of using the Privy Council is the associated cost. Considering the airfare for both litigants and lawyer, legal fees, cost of filing paperwork, accommodations, and employing a British barrister if needed, according to Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, a local barrister, and I quote, appealing a case at the Privy Council can accumulate costs of roughly 30 to 100,000 pounds, end of quote. Not EC, pounds. Therefore, the Privy Council is not accessible to the common man, but to the very wealthy. Also, the PC serves the entire Commonwealth, but is not the appellate court of the United Kingdom. However, utilizes judges of the UK Supreme Court. President of the UK Supreme Court, Lord Philip, said, and I quote, the amount of time these judges spend hearing PC matters disrupts the operation of the court, end of quote. With Commonwealth appeals and commitment to the local court system, would they urgently handle Grenada's matters? Data from the Siboney Chambers revealed that out of 2,000 or more cases between 1991 and 2017, only 16 cases from Grenada were heard at the Privy Council, 0.8%. This reveals that matters may not swiftly be handled. However, in Barbados, the case of Professor Eddie Ventos versus the Chief Electoral Officer of Barbados in 2018 was heard by the CCJ in about 4 days after filing. Another limitation is the tedious process of preparing to appear before the Privy Council. An interview with a registered Grenadian lawyer revealed that hundreds of documents must be gathered, filed, and bundled at the registry. This process can take days or even weeks, depending on the amount of documents accumulated over the course of trial. Furthermore, continued use of the Privy Council is mismanagement of our country's finances. It overlooks the provisions made under the revised Treaty of Chagaramas. CARICOM.org stated that the establishment of the CCJ Trust Fund entered in force in 2004, with Grenada being a signatory. As stated by the Now Grenada newspaper, Grenada's mandatory yearly contribution is US $220,000. We are already contributing to the trust fund. Why are we not using the CCJ as our appellant court and taking full advantage of this resource? Continued use of the Privy Council is a mismanagement of our country's finances. Finally, why do we continue to rely on the Privy Council, who relies on the British law context to settle matters of a Caribbean socio-cultural background? Being more familiar with the culture of our Caribbean people, the CCJ judges are better able to adjudge these matters. For example, a 2005 defamation case, Pandey versus Gordon, was brought to the Privy Council. Unaware of the cultural context of the case, the Privy Council went along with the CCJ's decision. If the Privy Council respects the socio-cultural legitimacy of this court, why don't we? Mr. Chairman, judges, I hope that these points were made abundantly clear to you. I will now sit as my colleagues continue to cement our position. Thank you.
The first speaker for the opposition.
Good morning, all. I refute the proponents' definitions. This issue of completing our independence by having our final court of appeal has always been a nagging one. As much as we would like to have our own court of appeal, we contend today that the CCJ should not be the final court of appeal for Grenada. Not now, not ever. As first speaker, I will define key terms in our argument and critically examine the CCJ's document, highlighting its provisions which facilitate political interference. My colleague will expose the deceitful arguments used by proponents of the CCJ. According to the book entitled Commonwealth Caribbean Law and Legal Systems, Final Court of Appeal is the court of last resort. It is the court at the apex of the justice system from which no further appeal can be made. Grenada's judicial system is a three-tiered one. It comprises the high courts at the base, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the second level of the tier, and the final court of appeal, its apex. This third level has the greatest judicial command, but is the most remote from the people. CARICOM.org states that the Caribbean Court of Justice was established in 2001 by the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas through the agreement establishing the CCJ. In its original jurisdiction, the CCJ is the final authority on disputes concerning the interpretation and application of the revised treaty. In its appellate jurisdiction, it is the final court of appeal in CARICOM for countries that have acceded to it. We are not here to argue the merits for any other court, but rather to examine various flaws of the CCJ and present these as evidence as to why the CCJ should not be Grenada's final appellate court. Firstly, the CCJ is not free from political affiliation and interference because of the allowances in the protocol to the agreement establishing the Caribbean Court of Justice. This document, in several respects, reserves power and influence to the politicians. Section 2 of Article 4 states, subject to this agreement and with the approval of heads of government, the Commission shall determine the terms, conditions, and other benefits of the President of the CCJ and the judges of the court. Additionally, in Section 4, the Commission's allowances and traveling expenses are from time to time decided by heads of government. In the 2017 annual report on the CCJ, Sir Dennis Byron, then chairman of the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission, urged for CARICOM to establish an independent commission for the remuneration of CCJ judges to support the independence of the court. Clearly, the heads of government still have some control over the purse strings. Furthermore, Article 9, Section 8 of the agreement establishing the CCJ encourages further political interference. Section 5.1, Article 9 declares that the heads of government have a role in the removal of the CCJ president. Article 7 of this said agreement states that the heads of government advise on and influence the appointment of the CCJ president. Section 2, Article 4 posits that the quota of judges may be increased by heads of government upon the recommendation of the Commission. Article 32 declares this agreement may be amended by the contracting parties, also known as heads of government. Consider the following example of political interference in the judiciary. Dominica News Online of March 27, 2012 asserts that Sir Brian Aline, former acting Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, was denied a permanent position on it. This occurred as a result of the then Prime Minister of Grenada taking objection to Sir Aline's appointment on grounds of dissatisfaction with decisions he made while serving as judge in Grenada. Are these the heads of governments that will impartially approve officials? If the court is so independent, then why do heads of government possess such influence? This leads us to question the integrity of the CCJ. Furthermore, doesn't the advocation of the CCJ from our own Prime Minister, the Barbadian Prime Minister, and just last night, the Dominican Prime Minister, suggest political influence? This interference does not have to be direct and detectable, but rather subtle and strategic. As a result of this, we cannot safely entrust our court of last resort to the CCJ. I thank you.
The second speaker for the proposition.
A resplendent morning to all. My opponents may try to paint a false picture representing the Privy Council as our best option, giving arguments to discredit the use of the CCJ. However, as already highlighted, there are major setbacks associated with the continued use of the Privy Council. No, I will outline the benefits of using a CCJ as our final appellate court. First, Mr. Chairman, the CCJ is an accessible court. It provides a cheaper alternative for litigants to access justice for an appeal. One, it operates right here in the Caribbean. Also, the CCJ evaluates the socio-economic background for appellants. For example, in the case of Ross v. St. Clair, 2008, the assessment led them to provide a pro bono appeal lawyer for a visually impaired Miss Ross, proving the accessibility to the CCJ for the common man. 2. The itinerant nature of the court provides alternatives for those incapable of traveling due to monetary limitations, like in the case of Shanique Mary versus the government of Barbados, 2012, where court officers travel to both countries to hear cases. Secondly, the CCJ is efficient through operative use of technology. For instance, video conferencing introduced virtual court proceedings where litigants or legal counsel don't have to be physically present. Trinidadian lawyer Mr. Vietnam Pasal said in praise, the CCJ was literally brought to the living room as he participated in a virtual court. Also, the electronic document filing system replaces the Privy Council's archaic physical filing system. Talk about advancements. Moreover, the CCJ ensures that all judges are fairly assigned, ensuring transparency, unlike the U.S. Supreme Court, where judges are politically assigned. The Treaty of Shagama stipulates that CCJ nominees must be suggested by the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission. Chief Justices are appointed by the Organization of Commonwealth's Caribbean Bar Association. Judges, this illustrates that transparency is built within the very hierarchy of the CCJ. Lastly, the CCJ allows us to become more independent from England while strengthening regional integration. It makes our region globally competitive by cementing our legislative powers. According to Davila, integration requires the support of the rule of law applied regionally and uniformly. Our CARICOM heads agree the CCJ is the only court that can hear lawsuits against the aforementioned treaty. Since the CCJ already effortlessly executes its original jurisdiction, why shouldn't it be Grenada's final appellate courts? For are we really independent if we keep rolling back to Mother England to settle our disputes? Nations such as Canada, New Zealand, and Barbados relinquish ties to the Privy Council. Why aren't we using it? Past New Zealand Attorney General Margaret Wilson said we must throw off once and for all the feathers of our colonial past. We have in the CCJ a cheaper, accessible, efficient, and transparent road to justice. Opponents, judges, chairman, why are we not using it? I thank you.
The second speaker for the opposition.
Pleasant morning, everyone. I maintain my colleagues' definitions. Proponents of the CCJ argue that acceding to it will afford Grenadians access to justice and delink us from colonial powers. This, however, rings hollow. In her address at the opening of Law Week 2016, Honorable Dame Janice Pereira, Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, stated, access to justice runs deeper than just the improvement of an individual or entity's accessibility to the court. Opponents, it's not simply a click of a mouse or a ride on a plane. The Chief Justice also said one of the vital principles of the rule of law is that the courts must be accessible, affordable, and disputes resolved without delay. Furthermore, once they enter the first tier of the legal pyramid, the legal rights of Grenadians can only be upheld if the courts are available, efficient, accountable, and impartial, featuring a proficient staff. Unfortunately, this is not the case in Grenada. According to Attorney at Law Claudette Joseph, our High Court has not been able to sit since May 2018. This is not access to justice. Litigants wait up to 3 years before they receive a judgment, with another 3 years for the court to hear their appeal, and another year for the court's judgment. This is not access to justice. Additionally, in order for most cases to get to the CCJ, they must first access the lower courts. The deficiency and delay of our local administration of justice is a denial of justice.
The Grenada registry statistics show that in 2017, 566 criminal and civil cases were filed in the High Court and 105 in the Court of Appeal. Only one was filed in the final Court of Appeal. Clearly, priority should be placed in rectifying the sorry situation in the lower tiers of our court system. That will be access to justice for the average Grenadian. Presently, for cases to be taken to the judiciary's final tier, they must be valued at least $1,500 EC. Moreover, Section 2A, Article 25 of the CCJ Agreement 2005 limits access to the courts. The prescribed cost or the value of the appeal of the CCJ is that of $25,000 EC and upwards. This means if a case is not at this value, it is not eligible to be appealed at the CCJ, whose case then values $25,000 for the few or the many. Added to that, we are deceived into believing that it will cost us less to access the CCJ. The reality is that Schedule 2, Part D of the CCJ rules shows that the basic cost for a person taking a case to the CCJ is over $64,000 EC, hardly different from the existing court. Sir Lawrence Joseph, Acting Attorney General and Chairman of the CCJ Advisory Committee, named the move to the CCJ a time to break the chains of attachment to colonialism. Perhaps he should drop his royal title. This is emotional distraction, diverting national attention from the flaws in the CCJ agreement and the struggles within our judiciary. Amending one section in our Constitution does not break away from colonial powers when colonial references permeate it. Isn't the Queen's representative still head of state? Deceptive premise? No CCJ. I thank you.
The opposition cross-examiner.
My worthy opponent, would you agree with me that the lack of proper facilities in Grenada, which prevents judges and magistrates from hearing cases, is a denial of justice?
No,
How so? Can you explain?
because the lack of facilities doesn't say that the judges are not doing their work properly.
I never said that the judges were not doing their job properly. I'm saying that it's a denial of justice. They are not able to enter the court to be heard.
That's why we need the final court of appeal, which is the CCJ.
How exactly are they going to get to the final court of appeal if they don't have an original decision being made by the High Court?
Well, they will have a decision made because it's not a denial of justice.
If court is closed, how can they have a decision made? My worthy opponent, I need to move on. In the 13 years of the operation of the CCJ, with only 4 countries acceded to it in its appellate jurisdiction, 13 of the $100 million in its trust fund has been used. At this rate, how can this support all countries of CARICOM indefinitely?
Because every country has to make a contribution to the trust fund, as Grenada has made $220,000. $220.
Contribution?
Yes, contribution. So,
Well, my worthy opponent, this contribution has already been made and the trust fund is depleting. In fact, the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission in its 2017 agenda stated that they need to cut costs and find new income sources. How is it going to support our court as well as the rest of the CARICOM?
how is not making the CCJ our final court of appeal going to do that?
Well, we won't be depending on the CCJ, which clearly doesn't have the finances. I need to move on again. If one of your concerns is about decolonization, don't you agree that we should begin at the top and replace the Governor General with the President?
No,
Why is that?
because we are going to be independent from the country that colonized us in the first place. And replacing the Governor General is not based on the moot, because the moot says the final court of appeal for Grenada. It doesn't say anything about making the Governor General.
My worthy opponent, this is about priorities. If our executive is still in part headed by England, how can we jump to the judiciary? The 3 branches of government?
If we branch off from England and go to the CCJ, we would not be under England anymore. Thus, we are free to make our own jurisdictional decisions.
We already make our jurisdictional decisions at the High Court, which is now it's not functioning. So how are we going to utilize the CCJ? Do you agree with...
The proposition cross-examiner.
My worthy opponent, we are part of CARICOM. We use UE, ECCB, CDB, and CARDI, CSME, and other provisions made under CARICOM. Wouldn't it make sense for us to use the CCG also?
My worthy opponent, do you know what the former Prime Minister of Jamaica has recently said about CSME, a failed CARICOM initiative? His words, not mine. Do we want to entrust our judiciary with CARICOM, who has consistently failed in meeting its objectives?
So you are okay. Are you aware that the final court of appeal for Grenada currently is the Privy Council?
Yes, I am.
Do you know how much it costs to try a court in the Privy Council?
Yes, I heard. Roughly 30 to 100,000 pounds.
Your first speaker stated that the Privy Council is removed from the people.
I don't think we said anything about that.
The court is not free of political influence.
That is correct.
But does it say that not having it at the final court of appeal, not having the CCJ as our final court of appeal and staying under the Privy Council, is that what you're saying?
We never posed any merits of the Privy Council, and we simply have been criticizing the CCJ. So if it means we have to stay with the Privy Council, then so be it. We cannot move to the CCJ as it stands.
My worthy opponents, are you saying that heads of government are a part of the Bar Association since judges are chosen by it?
Judges are not chosen by the heads of government. They are simply approved by the heads of government, which does have influence on the, not quality, but the, I can't say headspace, but headspace of the judges, because if you are approving the people, you're gonna rule in their favor most of the time.
Do you know of cases tried at the CCG under their original jurisdiction?
Yeah, I've heard of many.
Settling matters in the breach of the Treaty of Chagaramas. Have they not been doing this well? Have they not proven themselves?
No, they have not, my worthy opponent. There are many, many setbacks. There is a cost factor because there's a prescribed value which you must meet to go before the CCJ. So it's not accessible. Then also it has some discrepancies with the political interference as well. Finances is a problem. They're running out of money. We cannot trust our final court of appeal, our last resort, to the CCJ.
So where do we go?
We remain going to the Privy Council, my worthy opponent.
Do you know that judges that sit on the Privy Council also sit on the Supreme Court of the United?
The opposition rebuttal speaker.
My worthy opponents, if the CCJ is so advantageous, why must we put it against the Privy Council? Can't the CCJ stand on its own merits? Worthy opponents, we are not arguing the merits of the Privy Council, but rather we are exposing the flaws of the CCJ. If it is so well financed, then why did the Regional and Legal Service Commission in 2017 assert the need for the court to cut costs and find alternative means of financing? My worthy opponents, the cost of going to the CCJ and the Privy Council are virtually equivalent. According to the CCJ agreement, as stated by my second speaker, the prescribed value of a case is $25,000. If the common man's case is not worth that amount of money, how then are they going to be appealing it to the CCJ? Would they be turned away, worthy opponent? Decolonialization is not a reason to go to the CCJ, but rather access to justice. And my colleague has just explained that due to the prescribed value of a case, it is too great for the average person to go to the CCJ. Worthy opponent, your first speaker stated that the backlog of our cases is due to the High Court situation. Worthy opponent, exactly. We have no access to justice at our lower courts, therefore, how can we go to the CCJ? Your first speaker also mentioned the cost of going to England. Worthy opponent, are you aware that the Privy Council is an itinerant court and it can actually go to the countries that have the cases tried? Worthy opponent, the features you have listed of the CCJ are all features of a modern court. Any court system in the modern world would have to obtain these features. Is independence a real concern? Our head of state is still the Governor General, and the proponents of the CCJ actually carry knighthoods of British command. Worthy opponent, your second speaker referenced the Shanique Myrie case. This case, worthy opponent, was not tried in the appellate jurisdiction, which our case stated, but it was tried in the original jurisdiction of the court, which handles treaty matters.
The proposition rebuttal speaker.
Good morning, all. Our opponents mentioned that the CCJ may have a high rate of corruption. Therefore, we should vote against them being our final appellate court. But isn't there alleged corruption on politics, law enforcement, and now even the health systems of Grenada? My worthy opponents, the issue with the chicken. We find lots of faults in all these, but still vote and stand in support? If we have faith in the politicians who governs our country, shouldn't we have faith in the CCJ to uphold the standards of the legal system and do what is right to effectively govern the country? You believe that the educational status of the judges of the UK is higher than that of the Caribbean judges. So what you're saying is that the education that officers of the CCJ receive from our very own Caribbean universities is not good enough? Therefore, none of us should go there. We should all go to school in England. But Sir Roland Sanders, former Antiguan High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, states, the judgments of the court have been widely and internationally acclaimed, and each of the judges of the court is highly respected by his or her peers in the global judicial system. The opponents talked about judges not having proper equipment, but if we look at it, the CCJ's technology. My worthy opponents, your cross-examiner spoke about the CCJ removing the Governor General if they come into power, but the CCJ does not affect the arms of government. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I leave you with this thought. Emancipate yourself from legal slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. It is us, Mr. Chairman, you and me, keeping ourselves shackled to the legal court in England. Let us free ourselves and say yes to the CCJ as our final court of appeal. We rest our case.
And the winner is St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's. Thank you for joining us. Tune in again for Season 11 of the Grenlec Debates. Visit us on Facebook to vote for your favorite debater.
The Grenlec Debates. Powering bright ideas. Vote for your favorite debater on our Facebook page. The Grenlec Debates. Powering bright ideas.